Hello, my juicy co-creators. Lilou here. I'm in London with Lars, and you're Danish. I love it. I'm French, American, you're Danish, and we're meeting here in London. How perfect. I love your hat.
Yeah. I don't know if I do, but I have to break it, Yeah. So
I think it suits you so perfectly, and
thank you.
And I'm excited to be interviewing you. And speaking of, and I know some of you are going to love this, of Magdalene, Joshua, and the Seer and the Grail and all of that, all those amazing names that we hear of that are out there in our consciousness. And maybe there's been some miscommunication and some information that was holding back, but now we're opening up. And a lot of my interviews are around this feminine energy coming through and what's really going on. So I'm excited to speak with you, Lars. And I want to thank Watkins' book, because I know you're published by them, and thanks to them we were able to connect really quickly. And none of those interviews are done, I believe, by coincidence. And there is this magical kind of tapestry. And lately, the word seer really came about in a few different interviews. And I'm kind of intrigued by that, because we hear of psychics and we hear of divinities and oracles, but Seer is a little bit different. I know that you were in contact with one of them years ago. You had quite a childhood, a lot of suffering. Even later on as an adult, you in parallel, you kind of a songwriter also and a singer. So much has happened. But tell us about this moment when you were 10 years old and you lost your sister and start seeing the world in a different way. And it was quite a very painful time, huh?
Yes. The whole process opened me up, it really changed my life completely. And I was suddenly, it was like somebody had just, what do you call it, the veil between this reality and some other reality just disappeared, overnight, and I became very sensitive. I started looking through people I could hear what they really were thinking, and I couldn't find out, because they thought one thing, said another, and did a third thing. It was really frightening for me, 10 years old. And I was starting to develop different kinds of other kind of perceptions. I could feel other people's pain, and I took it upon me. So it was very difficult. Yes.
And at the same time that you were having, and what you called a painful Kundalini type of experience, you were receiving messages, and you were recording that through your journal. I mean, how was that working?
That's another thing maybe about this. I started developing some Kundalini kind of movements that came about every night. But when I met the Seer many, many years later, he told me that this was very normal for everybody. When you become a sexual person, when Eros is awakened, when you are 10, 12 or whatever, for me it was around there when I was 10, these things happens. But if you have you are in an accident or get a shock or something, it can really be a painful and long-lasting process. Mostly we just experience it like that, and then we forget all about it. But to me, it was something that lasted 2.5, 3 years. So, and it wasn't that I got any messages like that. The veil was just removed,
So you're seeing people differently and having an insight in their story, huh?
I think I picked up on how, when every seer, and everybody is in fact a seer in one way or the other. We tend to, when we get connected to something, we are living in an intelligent universe, and there's information all around us. But when we connect to it, this information has to go through you. It has to be filtered to who you are and all your prejudices and whatever you have of fears and stuff. So that goes for me too also when I was a kid. At that point, I didn't know anything about anything. Nobody had told me about what's this. And so it was just so frightening. And I could see things that other people didn't seem to see in the same way or experience. So I really couldn't get this together. I couldn't find out how is this what I'm doing here. What is happening to me?
So you could speak to your parents, or they were some kind of open to it.
I started writing, and they didn't tell me that they found out that they knew about my writing. At one point, I was taken to a psychologist, and he said that he couldn't take the responsibility for me if they didn't made me stop this writing. Then he thought that I would go mad. But my parents, of course, they knew that me writing was what could save me. So they just let me have that. And I think also they had so much on their plate after my sister died, and we were strictly working class, trying to get it together, and my mother was a hairdresser, my father was a taxi driver, so they really had enough to. So I think it suited them well that I could write and.
What's interesting to notice and say, and a lot of us have experienced that, is when something like that or tragedy happens during it, we think we're responsible for it. You thought on some levels there has been some kind of forgiveness, I guess, to do.
I think that maybe because of my karmatic background, I had to go through this. And I had to go through it without any form of, call it light or help, or so it was not before I was 15 years old that something happened that I got a envelope one day with the post, but without any sender of it, and in it there was a book from the Sufi master Hazrat Inayat Khan, full of aphorisms and sayings. And that really saved my life, really.
What sentence really resonated with you at the time?
The first one I remember was, and that really made me connect, was, if you will go forward towards us, we will bow down and lift you up. And that really resonated with me. So I thought, okay, I'm not alone. There is somebody else who knows about these things.
Did you start communicating with entities or even angels or light beings or whatever we can call it then, or was it only later on when you met the seer?
I was so surrounded by all this every day that, and because of, it was so scary for me because I couldn't connect. I just wanted to have it to stop, because it was too overwhelming, and too much for me. I just wanted to be normal. As other kids, But after I went out of school, I started. I went into the music business. I was in a group, and I was had no ambition at all. I was just musical, so that became a way of being here. I had an identity and made some money and stuff.
Was that in Denmark? And so you're a professional?
Yes, that was in Denmark. There's another thing that really made a big impression on me. When I was 18 years old, we went on a tour to Israel where we had a commitment tour for 3 months. And after a month there touring around in Israel, playing music, suddenly it dawned on me, tonight we are going to Nazareth, tomorrow Bethlehem, and then it's the Sea of Galilee and Jerusalem. And suddenly I thought, wow, it dawned on me that we were right there, And since that, I found out I've always been connected to that place in many ways.
How do you explain all the suffering that you went through, though? Because even later on, you went through another 3 years in the bed and really feeling terrible physically from what you're saying. How do you explain that you had to go through so much, or that we have as human beings to go through this suffering?
I think it's the one gift that we get that we never realize is a gift. And I did not either, but it's a kind of cleansing. That's something that we have to go through. But if we can see through it and see that behind it, or deep hidden within the pain or whatever we are going through, there is a gift. The experience and what we learn. And if it results in us being more conscious of what we're doing, because consciousness is the real key and why we are here. So I think that's what it's really about. It's a cleansing process, and for us to waking up. Pain is the messenger, and the message is wake up.
When you were in the bed and you were suffering, at some point you got the message that, okay, I'm going to take on the suffering of the whole planet now. I might as well, or something to that extent. Was that for you, or is that something that you recommend now? What do you recommend to people to actually snap out of the suffering, if they're there physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually?
Normally, when people go through any kind of suffering, of course, they don't want to do it. So they are complaining, and they are, isn't it bad for me? And blah, 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 blah. Instead, you could really make it meaningful to be it, not for yourself, but for the whole world. You can take upon you the pain of the world, and that may sound megalomaniac, but it really makes a difference. And I can't stop thinking about, without any comparison, that's very important, that what Jesus did when he went on the cross was not to take away our sin. Because if he really did that, there was no reason for us to be here. We have to take responsibility for ourselves. So him taking upon him the pain of the world, in that gesture he tried to show us that we can make the meaningless meaningful. You can give meaning to everything you do, even pain. So that's a message, I think.
And we're gonna go in greater detail on the message too that you got and what you've learned through going through those writings, and the Aramaic writings, and all that. But the last little piece that is important in your story to talk about is you're meeting this seer at some point that really helped you and that you spent quite a lot of time with.
Yes, I mean he was very precise. He was a former military man. So he was very, and that was not maybe the last one I needed, I thought, but that was exactly what I needed. And he was so intimidating in many ways because he could look straight through you. But on the other hand, I could look straight through to him too, because we were meant to meet for other reasons that him helping me, I also had to help him. So.
You knew why did you knew he was real, and why did you know that there was really something there that you needed to learn through him? Because you dedicated part of your time to learning through him. So because there, in the spiritual world and teachers, there's a bit of everything. So how did you know he was real, and how can we know when a teacher is real for us and good for us?
Just imagine that you have been lying on a bed for 3 years, nobody can help you. And suddenly here, you talk to someone on the telephone, and within 10 minutes, he have got you up of the bed and healed you. Then you know
that would do it, yeah.
Yeah, I think you don't need any more preparation. You just go with it. But an important thing that I learned also through him, that is always trust your first impression. Yeah. Go with it. Because if you start thinking about it, forget it, then it's gone. So before the person can interfere, and I know, because every time I interfere with anything in my business, it goes just down the drain. Just forget it. Just go with the flow and try to stay connected. And then you know exactly when it's right or when it's wrong. It is when you start questioning what you're feeling, then you have lost it completely.
The doubts, yeah.
Yes. So you just try to be to act ethical and be all right and treat others the way you want it to be treated. I mean, it's not so. It's not. I mean, it's so very easy. In fact, it's very, very easy. You know, just go and do it.
Yeah.
Don't talk about it. Do it.
How did you know? Because this is the trilogy. Huh? How did this started? How did you knew that you had to write a book?
I really didn't, but the first day when I met this seer down the mountain of Montségur, when we came down the mountain, I heard myself say, I think that this meeting will result in me writing 3 books. And when we came down from the mountain, just in the evening when we sat by the fire, he said, he responded and said, yes, I'll be part of 2 of them. And the third one, there will be somebody else. And that was exactly how it was. It came to be.
Yeah. And so what are some of those things? How so this was over 7 years, a course of 7 years, and how did this?
This all started in the late 1990s. I fell ill in 1994, and 3 years later I came in connection with him. So it all happened from there, and the next 7 years, yes.
Mm-hmm. And what were some of the elements of your own progression? And do you feel your own evolution throughout the 7 years is something similar that we're all going through? Or, I mean, why did you decide to write this book?
I just had to.
Yeah.
I was committed to do it. Yeah. So there was no, do you want it or don't you? I just had to do it, and I did it, and I got so much help. And I can even today I can open it, and there's a lot of things I can't account for. But of course, mostly the things I've experienced, because I don't talk about anything that I haven't experienced myself. So, but still, there's things in that book that wow, where did that came from? And so.
Let's open it randomly to a place to see what we can talk here about, because there's so many teachings.
Yeah. That's a good question.
How about that one? What was going on here?
Yeah, that's a nice. The isogenic being. That's the.
Let's show the picture.
Yeah. That has something to do with the masculine and the feminine becoming one. I think that's a picture of. But yeah,
like what you said about the Mary and the Mary Magdalene coming together and seeing this picture and reuniting. This is a big part of your message, I guess.
Yeah, it all happened actually before I met the seer. All back in the 80s, I started working with the Magdalene, and it came all through me learning the Aramaic language, which was the language of Jesus of Magdalene. And because I discovered that the psychology behind that language is so profound and so exciting and so deep and universal and spiritual, that without knowing about it, you don't have to actually speak the language, but you have to understand the psychology behind the language. It opens up to all the scriptures and to everything that you can even take the psychology with you and use it in reading other kind of messages and stuff. It's so opening, and one of the things is that I found out that about Jesus when he talks about the bridal chamber of the masculine and the feminine going into it's all in the New Testament, you know. But at that time I hadn't any clue about it. So of course when I read it and I found it was all there, I was so just astounded that I had
discovering a treasure.
Yeah, I had to go with it. So I found out that the feminine really contains 2 elements. The you could say the Madonna and the dancer, or what you call the Madonna and the prostitute, or the Mother Mary and the Magdalene, or the dove or the snake, the dove and the moon priestess. So it could also be agape and love, or eros. So when those 2 get together, you have the complete feminine. Without one of them, the feminine is incomplete. And for many years, it has only been the Madonna. The rest being turned into pornographic this and that, and that's why our society is so pornographic in everything. So it makes so much sense when it happened that so many books together with Dan Brown's also, but you should remember there were so many other books that came in with this message on different levels, of course, because they had to. This message had to be exposed on so many levels, so as much people as possible could to know about it. But for me, it started really in the 80s, and yeah.
So what is some of the message? Because I guess we're all carrying the masculine and the feminine within us. So what is the work for us to do? What do you feel our society or us as human beings right now need to see and heal maybe?
Yeah, we have to heal the sexual part of us. It has to be healed because of the suppression that has been going on for so many years. So whether we are Christians or not, I think we carry the Yeshua and the Magdalene archetype within us in one way or the other. So we have to open up to that. And in order to do that, I understand why a lot of people can't, when they hear the word or the name Jesus, they can't say, or Holy Spirit and stuff like that. But we have to understand that there's so much deeper meaning to those topics that we have to learn about them in order to understand what it's really about. Because a lot of people think it's all about Jesus and Mary Magdalene being married and having kids and there's a bloodline and stuff. Forget it. It's not interesting. It's completely dull knowledge. Of course, it's interesting they're married, but I mean, we have to go much further. We have to see that they were initiated, both of them, and that Mary Magdalene almost 100% got her education by the therapists in Mareotis, the Lake of Mareotis outside Alexandria, where men and women could go in equality and learn all about the stars and healing and you name it. I mean, it was really an education that made you a complete doctor. And in Magdalene's, the Magdalene, Magdal is a kind of initiation name. There was a lot of Magdalenes, but there was only one Magdalene, the Magdalene. That was Mary the Magdalene. And she was probably married to Jesus, but it was in another sense of the word that we understand today. They were equal. She was the teacher of the female, and he of the male followers. So that was it.
Yeah. What does it take to be initiated? Nowadays, those days.
Yes,
it's a big topic.
Yes, it is. But if you go into the New Testament, you could actually read all about it. When Jesus went out 40 days in the desert, we can read in the Aramaic, he set himself in an unprotected state. In an unprotected state. It's very interesting. What does that mean to put yourself in an unprotected state? You're opening up to meet the wild animals of the desert, your own shadows. So the first thing everybody must do, and a lot of people don't really want to.
It's pretty scary.
Yeah, that is to work with your own shadows, because everybody has a shadow somewhere, and a lot of them we find out is hidden in the sexual department. That means if you have a real good partner, you should have the guts to share your most intimate fantasies with the other part. That could be very difficult, because if the other part are not open for that, I mean, forget it. So if you open up your doors to your inner self and invite somebody in there, that person, whoever it is, a woman or a man, must go in there without any prejudices. And it doesn't matter if that person doesn't understand anything of what they experience inside there. They must just go with it and respect it and embrace it. If they can't do that, I mean, forget it.
What do you mean forget it? Because there's a lot of partners that are just not ready to hear this stuff.
Yes, but then they have to be ready for it, because there's no going in over the fence where or anything. You have to really commit yourself to this. You have to be honest and mature, and that's what needed. You have to be a mature human being in order to do this.
And childlike too. Because we, a lot of us, or more and more, we feel like the more to get the layers out, we are also becoming more childlike. So it's both. Huh? It's again another paradox.
Yeah, but there's also another thing that a lot of people think that because they have this dirty fantasy or any sexual drive or something, they really think this is not spiritual. I can't. It's really. Forget about it, because it's on a complete another level. And the moment we understand that all those fantasies really are part of something more collective that is being played out through every one of us, it's nothing personal. You shouldn't be so scared about it. I think if you have a good partner, it could help a lot of people being healed if they could play out that fantasy, or just have the guts to talk about it. You know?
My God, what are we co-creating here? Oh.
Because after that, there will be a shadow. You know, all the gold that we are really looking for is hidden underneath the shadow. And one thing is the sexual part of it, but there are so many other parts of the shadow. And that was really what they did when they went into the mystery school. The first thing everybody had to do, also Yeshua, when he went into the Nazarene mystery school and the Essene mystery school, they had to go 40 days in the desert in order to set themselves in an unprotected state. And that's something nobody really wants. Have you met somebody who wants to put themselves in an unprotected state? No. Everybody is protecting themselves, and they are hiding. You know,
to some degrees, even calling light beings for protection. I mean, there it is.
I tell you something. I went into the secret cave, at least in the Mont Seer, and I was connected to some beings in there, or within myself or in the high I was connected to. And I asked the question, how long are human beings going to look for God and search for God? And the answer was, they were never meant to. But if they could come out of hiding, so maybe God could find them. And in that, I understood that hiding really meant all our prejudice, all our fear, all our...
To be simply vulnerable and authentic. And then we meet.
If you can, and that exactly, if you can put yourself in an unprotected state, that means come out of hiding, so God can find you.
Stop pretending.
Yes, that's exactly what it's all about. And to pretend that nobody is a sexual person, for example, because I'm very, very spiritual now, and I'm very, very holy, and we are not going to talk about this dirty thing. Then, of course, you are just creating one more shadow. And that's exactly what we have been through the churches and all that. Don't talk about it. We couldn't do it. And just see what it has brought us. Just see what it brought the Catholic Church, all the priests in America who have been...
not only in America, I think all around the world with the children and the pedophiles.
It tells us that you create shadows if you're not going out in the open and just pronounce it. Exactly like when man invented we tried to split the atom in order to find God there. We thought that God was in it. We created the shadow instead of the shadow of God, the atom bomb. And that's the way we'll continuing if we don't stop being afraid of pronouncing what it's all about and go out in the openness. That doesn't mean that you and I are supposed to go down on the street and listen, I'm a very and this and that. But if we have somebody, a partner to work with, that's really what it's all about. And if we can do that in equal respect for each other, we have any chance of being a success, and we can go in, and we can go much deeper in our spiritual work. But it takes guts, and it takes a good partner. Of course, it does. But we can also...
And self-respect and love, because all of the work starts here, no?
Of course, self-respect, because a lot of people don't have any partners. So we can unite the masculine and feminine in ourselves. And I think a lot of people, when they have been in a lot of relationships and they found out, now we can't do this anymore, because why I've been together with this man? Because I couldn't stand to be alone or be on my own. That's not a good way of... You have to stand on your own 2 feet, and you have to be connected. And if you can stand on your own 2 feet yourself, you can stand with everybody. So that's the main...
Beautiful. Last little message for us, maybe? Last little thing that you think is important to mention here? We could go on for hours. My goodness, this has been great. I know that if you want even more, there's another guy on Gaiam TV, another interview too, 45 minutes if you want to watch that. And there's plenty of work, and there is your book, and you're touring everywhere, and there's the website, and there's much information out. But if there's a last little message for us right now,
I think whatever we do, we have to be ethical first of all. If we aren't going to be that, just remember, everything we send out comes back to us. And we could also say everything you really need and everything you really thirst for is in reality all the things you yourself need to give.
Oh la la. What a program. Thank you, Lars. Thank you so much. I want to show again the cover of your beautiful book here. I have my copy. Yay! Big kisses by Juicy Co-Creators. Wherever you are, please share this video. Spread it around. Let's spread the joy and the love. Thank you. Big kisses to all of you. Bye-bye. Thank you.